Welcome back, everyone, to the Moms Like Me podcast, powered by Support Now. I am thrilled to be here today with Laura Joslin, who is a mom of two that is, I would say, a little bit further along in her journey, a more mature medical mama with a big and important story to tell. And as I was talking to her prior in the preparation for this podcast, so many of the moms we have the opportunity to meet are pretty early in the journey. And what I found is sometimes they just want someone that says, it's going to be okay. You're going to survive. It may look different, but you're going to be okay. And to me, Laura, when I was getting to know you, I think you represent that hope, that inspiration, that light. And so I am so thrilled to have you on the podcast today to further elaborate on your journey, how far you've come. So hopefully this feels reflective to you. And then just to also share with us kind of what you've learned and what you would tell someone that might be, again, earlier on in the journey. So Laura, thank you so much for being here today.
And thank you for having me. I mean, there is light at the end of the tunnel. I know it doesn't feel like it when you start this journey and you feel like you're all alone, but you're not. And it will challenge you in ways that are very good.
Yeah.
So I'm here for all the moms that come after me. And I've been trying to move a path along that helps people as I negotiated my journey. So,
Right. Well,
yeah.
why don't you share a little bit more? You've got two children with spastic, quadriplegic, cerebral palsy. How
That's
did all of this come about? Kind of talk to us about the moment where you were going to hold a different hat as a medical mama.
So my journey started in 1991. So, like I'm an OG, like I'm the old guard. So I've been around for a long time. My two children, my sons are 35 and 28. So I've navigated a lot of systems. I've navigated a lot of like problematic things that I encountered a long time ago that I've tried to help change. So through the years, but my sons, Shane and Matt, were very unique. Shane was born in 1991, like I said, 35 years ago, with 1 pound, 10 ounces prematurely and had a grade 4 bleed to the brain. So you're talking the most severe brain bleed that you could actually have. So I was a new mom with no experience, no medical background, zero understanding of like, I thought I was just going to have a child and it was going to be typical and everything was going to be fine, right? And that's not what happened. So it set me on a journey that has changed my life forever and has changed thousands of children's lives forever as I negotiated this. So I think that like, as I talk to moms that are just journeying through this in the first time, their life and their purpose may be in what's happening to them right now and they just don't realize it. So as I can tell you that after, journeying with all of the diagnoses, all the doctors, all the things that were happening to Shane, now at 35, he is about to graduate with his PhD from the University of South Florida with his degree in the philosophy of cognitive science and disabilities.
Wow.
So I have to say that every journey is different, right? Because my second son, we adopted at the age 3 from the Department of Children and Family, and his journey is different. But you can't under-potentialize what your child can do, and you can't listen to certain times that doctors are telling you your child cannot or will not. I had a doctor tell me that Shane would never walk, talk, and that I should take him home, and he was a neurologist, take him home and just be glad he was alive. I'm glad that I did not listen to that voice, right? That I looked into my son's eyes and I went, there's something there and I've got to figure out how to get it out of him, right? And I've got to figure out how to negotiate this entire system.
I'm curious, Laura. It's interesting because, again, you are a more, I like what you said, an OG, right? You're a veteran, you're a pro. In the early 90s, did it feel any more or less kind of like taboo or challenging than kind of what you see moms presented with today?
I think that there wasn't a lot of knowledge or research on, like how the brain actually, the plasticity in the brain they said, by the age of 3, if whatever you have, you have. That's not true now, and now science has proven that basically that, the plasticity in the brain can grow until you like the end of your life, right? So, I mean, if I always question that because, like, if that was true, then stroke victims could not, like, continue to, like, get better, or
Right,
anyone that had
recover.
a brain injury, Like, so even back when, I questioned what was happening, right?
Right.
Now there's a lot more research. There is a lot more out there, and I see a lot more change, but I wanted to be the change that I wanted to see. So, for me, I started with the physical part, like I needed to change his physical being, right? I needed him to get better. So I did research and went into like the European countries, and I opened Ability Plus Therapy, which is the second clinic in the country to open with intensive pediatric physical therapy. So I was like, you can't just tell me that this is going to end at 3 years old and that he will not have any more physical ability. Now Shane walks on hand canes, and uses his chair for like short, long distances. For short distances, we use hand canes. So his mobility is really good. And that doctor, that neurologist that I sat in his office, it was wrong, right?
What was your background? Like, you've done so much travel and research. I can't imagine that you were, maybe you
Absolutely.
were educated in this, but what was your background? Because it sounds like
Yeah.
you just kind of created your own degree in
No.
therapeutic
Yeah.
interventions.
Yeah, no, I did. My background is I'm a classically trained chef. I actually graduated as a chef. So, and my husband was a chef at Disney World. So, like
Yeah.
I had no knowledge. But, I was so there was like barely internet access. Like I would go to the library and pick up books on neurology and sit next to his incubator and start reading about what a grade 4 bleed to the brain actually did and how it affected him. So it was a hard road, but I want to make that road a lot easier for a lot of other parents.
Laura, I could see an analogy though with being a chef. The best chefs, they have different ingredients
Yeah,
and they know how to create something beautiful. They know how to make something that people love. And it sounds like that's kind of very much the spirit of which you approached being a mom. It's like, okay, well, maybe my ingredients are a little bit more challenging. They may not make sense to a lot of people,
right,
but I'm going to create something out of this. And I'm going to
right.
believe that this is going to be something good. I think that's a really kind of an interesting framing. I'm sure you've thought about it before,
Oh, yeah.
but that is really what you did. You said, "No, I'm
Yeah,
gonna take these ingredients, I'm gonna make something of it.
yeah,
You can't tell me otherwise." I
absolutely.
I'm really part of what I think is so inspiring about your journey is, of course, all the ways that you've taken this experience to help elevate and make easier for parents out there that have challenges with their children, whether that be cerebral palsy or traumatic brain injury, things of that sort. And I think that for what we've learned along the way is that when you're in the moment, it's so heavy. It's so heavy when you're trying to figure out how am I going to make it from day to day, week to week. As you like reflect back on your journey with both Shane and Matt, what were the
Mhm.
things that you were doing to help kind of get through those seasons where there was a little bit more uncertainty as to how you were going to allow them to thrive and to accomplish what they did?
Well, I have to say that that would probably be my faith. I know that, God makes your journey and your path straight. And so as long as you rely on that, it really helped me. So personally, in those moments, including the fights with the Department of Children and Family, adopting Matt, you would think they'd all love that I adopted a child with spastic quadriplegic cerebral palsy, but they didn't, you know. So it's all of these fights and these journeys as you're going through is like you have to rely on something. For me, it was a higher power. It was like, show me the way, right? And he completely showed me the way. From therapeutic interventions to now educational interventions, which is what my son Matt took me through. Matt came to me at 3 years old with spastic quadriplegic cerebral palsy. He was low birth weight, but he also had drug addiction and alcohol fetal syndrome. So you're
Wow.
talking frontal lobe damage, you're talking all of the, a lot more than Shane had going on, right?
Right.
So I realized right then that like I had struggled through the public school system with Shane, who where he is now, a professor at USF and UCF, University of Central Florida. Like I knew that they would not be able to handle the Matthew of the world, you know? And so I thought, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way to get both therapeutic values and education values together. So we opened No Limits Academy 18 years ago for that very reason. And we took only physically disabled, brain injury, spinal cord injury children because there was no other school like it in the whole state of Florida. And so I was like, we need to work on this and figure out how do we reach and teach these children, these nonverbal or limited verbal children. And because Matthew came to me nonverbal. But through the years, now Matt's 28, he graduated with his AA and he's now mentoring with a pastor. So he wants to be a pastor. So his journey's different than Shade's, but still we wanted to reach that highest potential, both therapeutically and educationally with him. And that's what I saw. Parents were choosing one or the other. And I was like, okay, why? We don't do that for our typical children. We want both. We want them to be active and in sports and all these other things. And that's how you grow cognition in the brain. And then
Right.
we also want them to be educated. So, or at least understand how other people can understand them. Right.
Right.
So
Right.
that's a whole nother topic about education and how it's really just a box that makes workers in industry. But for me, I was like, I have two children that I've got two different experiences, but I understand the difficulties from one to another.
I'm Laura, I'm sorry to cut you off. I'm just trying to understand how you had the bandwidth. Like, how? Like, truly, it sounds so exhausting not to have one, but two children with different needs as you spoke to. So it's you're balancing that and at the same time trying to stand up No Limits Academy to and Abilities Plus. Like, how did you actually find the time and the energy to do all of those things?
Well, my late husband was a big supporter of what we were doing. So I have to say that his support and his family support and my family around me, and then the people that came around me, my business partner, like the therapists that work for me, they all see the mission the same way I do. Like, it's not about like having a business. It's
Right.
about having a business that actually changes something while I'm gone. Like, and they see it too. You want to live a life that like in this purpose, it drives you. Once you figure out that like maybe you can get past the stages of grief and hurt. And I can tell you that, like, I'm tearing up right now because I understand the difficulty that each parent is facing. I understand it. And you don't have to be a me. I just know that God gave me the ability to like look at things at 10,000 feet and then say, what do I need to do to fix it? Right? Well, how do I fix it for my children? How do I try to fix it for other children? And how do I make their lives better? And it's just a mission for me. So it's like I dove in, like, and I just didn't look back, right? And I worked with government programs. I did fundraising. So I love Support Now. Like, I did tons of fundraising and things like that. And it was just me trying to figure it out, and now you have a whole community around Support Now, to help that. So I just took it as my mission in life and I didn't look back.
It was almost like that was your North Star. So you saw an
Yeah.
opportunity and instead of kind of like crumbling in the minutia, you just elevated all of it. And that's where you found the inspiration to keep going. I mean,
Right.
it's really remarkable. And again, that's not to say that if you're a mom listening and you're in the trenches right now, don't feel like you have to
No.
do that. But what you are saying, Laura, is find your people and find find
Yeah.
find people that believe that there is more for your child, because as I heard this on another episode I did recently, that medical moms, they're like alpha moms, right? They're not just typical moms, they're alpha moms because they've got to be able to advocate for their kid. They're thinking not just about today, they're thinking about the next few weeks, the next few months, the next year, and balancing all of that mental load so different than you would with a typical child, right? Moms already carry
Oh,
a lot
yeah.
of mental load, but if you have in this case, two children with complexities, it's even more so.
Right.
And again, to get back to kind of what you've built, which is so incredible, and I want to continue to highlight this, is that there are now resources out there, resources, Laura, that you didn't have. You created something that you wish you had to narrow the gap. It will speak to specifically to, the No Limits Academy method that narrows that gap from an education perspective. So again, let's dive into that a little bit more. So you said
Sure.
you started it 18 years ago. Talk to me about all of that.
Sure, sure. So 21 years ago, I saw that there was a gap in how you rehabilitate any brain injured child, right? I was like, okay, I have a brain injured child. How do I rehabilitate him? So I would go to OT, I would go to PT, I would go to speech therapy, but it was once or twice a week, right? And then I was doing the follow through and I was like, wait, where's real rehab? Where's rehab that really makes a significant change in a small amount of time and then over and over again. I was like, and in Europe, they have done that, right? So I
Mhm.
was like, let's go look there and let's bring it back to this country because this country had no idea. And I thought, why am I showing up with a brain injured child? I mean, brain injury is not new. Like, why hasn't anyone else figured this out? So I saw the ability to help more with helping my children. And so at that point, I was like, okay, let's do this. And then as I adopted Matt, I realized that, No Limits Academy needed to be born. And then at the last 18 years, we've been reestablishing how you function with kids that are nonverbal. What do you put in place? How do you structure it? How do you teach a teacher and a teacher's aides to work together for the purpose of the child, right? In our educational system all over the country, there are kids sitting in classrooms that are nonverbal and they have no way to speak. So how do you teach them? How do they get that information that you're teaching? You're in an educational environment and you're not being able to answer to the lesson of the day, right? We would be up in arms if it was neurotypical children not being able to do this, right?
Right.
Because they're disabled, they seem to get this okay, well, they're safe or and sometimes they're not, right? And those people need to understand that these kids have potential and they need to be able to access that potential. And we figured it out at No Limits Academy and then we put it online. And we're teaching people how to access education or even how to ask the right questions. Like when you're in a school system, how to ask the right questions to a therapist, to a teacher, so that your child does succeed, right? To whatever level that is. You may not see it now when you're in it and it's new. I didn't see it. I didn't see Shane being a professor at University of South Florida. I did not see that, right? I just tried to make his journey better. I didn't see what Matt's doing now, but I see he has a full life, right? And that's really important. That's what we're all striving for our
Right.
children to be the best they can be, right? So, as we created this with our team of therapists and our team of educators, we put it together and it's called therapeutic education or the No Limits method. So, right now, our first module is all about the how and the why we do things. And there's 36 digital lessons and 32 micro credentials, meaning my speech therapist, my OTs, my teachers are all talking to you about the questions you should be asking to get the potential out of your child that you need. And that's really important. And that's all we care about. We made it very reasonable. It's $19.99 per month as a subscription. And module 2 will be coming out next year, which will be application of everything we're doing. So you could literally open your own school, homeschool, do whatever you need in your life to make your life easier. You don't have to relocate here to Melbourne, Florida, like to come here, which has happened a lot, and we have a huge waiting list. I don't want you to do that. I don't want your life I want you to live your life where you're at with your support group around you. Like,
Right. You
you
wanna
know
feel like you wanna empower these families, these caregivers to realize that you have the tools, these tools are accessible to you. It doesn't
Yes.
require you to leave your other children or your husband, like,
No.
you
No.
can do this from your
No.
home or within your own school system. Something you said I wanna go back to, which I think is just really interesting. It's like it almost seems like what you were describing is that schools that in some senses, and the special education departments felt more like childcare.
Yes.
Like, it's a few hours a day for caregivers to get a break,
Right.
frankly, for
Right.
their kids to hopefully be safe, right? To
Mm.
allow them to feel
Hopefully.
happy and inclusive with other kiddos that might have this other disabilities, maybe not.
Yeah.
And what you're talking about is really rewiring and
Right.
reframing what education means by giving both parents and the educators themselves to understand that your job isn't simply to create a safe environment where kiddos feel happy, but it's also to make sure that they have the confidence and competence to educate themselves so they can educate these kids on how to
Right.
really access that more inside of them.
Right. I want parents to have choices. They don't need to have just one choice. In the state of Florida, there's a lot of parental choice in education, which I have been a part of in the government for a long time. I totally believe in that. I believe that you should have a choice because I did not have a choice back when Shane was coming up. And I probably would have made different choices if I did. His outcome was still good, but it's still there needs to be more choices for parents, you know?
Right. Well, and I think so much of what I hear on this podcast and outside of the podcast as well is just people, moms especially, they just worry about what's next. What's
Right.
next? What's next? Like after I get to this like survival stage, how can I allow my child to thrive in a way that makes sense for them? And that fear of limiting them because of not knowing what to do can consume you.
Ugh.
Especially if you have more able-bodied or typical kiddos that you're comparing them against. Like, how can I possibly strive to get them not necessarily on an even playing field, but just know that you're doing the things that you can do to control, certain outcomes.
Well,
So what you represent is just a lot of hope that there could be better outcomes. You
yeah,
just have
yeah,
you have to make sure you're asking the right questions, and you have to make
right.
sure you have the right tools.
I mean, even though I have 2 disabled children, their outcomes are different because they're individuals of their own, right? So you can't really your neurotypical child, you can't compare to your disabled child, but you also don't allow people to under-potentialize your disabled child. And so to ask the right questions is part of our micro-credentials. So therapists telling you and teachers saying, "Here's some questions that you may want to ask of yourself or of other people that are around them," right?
Right.
And so we've got the 21 years of experience with ability and the 18 with no limits academy that has given us all these questions. We've been asked all these questions. We've asked all these questions.
Right.
So it may spark something in you that you're like, I didn't look at it that way. Right. I've had a lot of therapists that have told me things that I'm like, okay, I don't agree with that. And then I've had a lot that tell me things and I'm like, I so agree with that because I could see it in my child. You as a parent are going to know how to take what you're being told, right? But you also don't know, which I didn't know, is how to ask the right questions,
Right.
right?
And I
That
think
too.
that's foundational. It
Mhm.
we see that all the time on the grant side of support now, where we always say, it's not that funding isn't available. It's just that people don't even know what to look for, right? They don't even know what's possible. That there's grants for therapies, there's grants for equipment, there's grants for respite, there's grants for all these certain things. And so it's a very similar mindset that we have here. It's making sure that these families are better equipped to know what's possible because you're asking the right questions. You know what to Google search. You know who your people are. I think that the overwhelm at the beginning, especially at the beginning of a journey, is you're not really sure because you didn't sign up for this.
No.
You
No, I
didn't.
did
Most
not.
people, although you signed up for it the second time, so I guess that you're
Well,
the
yeah,
exception to that.
a little torture for me. No, no, and, it's did not the journey was unique because Matt was unique. It wasn't the same, it was similar, So, you know, you have to look at them as individuals
Right.
and how you walk with them. But, there is hope.
Right.
There's hope, and there's a lot to navigate, and I sit with parents a lot. I mean, I have thousands of clients that come through Ability from all over the world, and we sit with parents a lot, and we understand, and I understand, how the grief process works, and then depending on when your injury is, whether that's, at birth or after birth or just genetic, it doesn't matter what it is, it matters how you're handling it, and you're not gonna be perfect all the time. That's the one thing. Because mom guilt, I always say when people enter my office, I'm like, "No mom guilt. Leave that at the door." Like, "We gotta talk."
Right, because you have to push forward, and
Yes.
you can't be second guessing decisions or situations where you could have maybe second guessed yourself. Laura, as we begin to wrap
Yeah.
up, I wanna give you
Yep.
the chance to share with everyone how they can find you, how they can find out more about No Limits. Take the floor.
Okay, thank you. So you can find out about Ability Plus Therapy. We have a website. It's www.abilityplustherapy.com. Also, No Limits Academy. And if you get it to Ability, it will get you to the other sister companies. But I'm here for anyone that has any questions. You don't have to come here. I'm a mom that also, I have a podcast. So at No Limits Method, which really more talks about the journey and, government programs and things like that. But I completely support your cause.
Yeah.
Support Now and Abby have been, it's just an excellent company, and you should be very proud of
Thank
what
you.
you've created
I
in your
appreciate it.
journey through
Thank you.
this life.
Well, as I always say, part of why the podcast is my favorite thing that I do is I get to learn. We get to learn, we get to get better by hearing real stories, real challenges, real pain points, and then try to build around those pain points to make things easier. And that's exactly what you've done, Laura, which is why I appreciate so much this conversation and dialogue today, because it's both cathartic and spiritual in the sense of that you can do this, you can rise above it all,
Yep.
there's a path forward. But it's advice you gave today is also quite tangible. Like, there are very real action steps that someone listening to this can take, which I think is incredibly meaningful. And just on a personal note, Laura, you really are just like such a light. Like, it's really, I don't know. I know
Thank you.
that the community around you probably tells you this all the time, but it really is so inspirational. And to hear how you've navigated this with both your boys, you just have to be so proud, and I'm so proud, and I hardly know you. It's just the coolest thing in the world to see what they've accomplished and that their dreams they're still able to live out their dreams,
They
which is, I think, as moms, that's all you want. You want your kids
Absolutely.
to be able to dream and to feel like they've got a chance at it. That's all we all want. So,
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining us today. I look forward to many more conversations with you
Absolutely.
together, and excited for more of our listeners to find out about these excellent resources. Thank you,
Well, thank
Laura.
thank you so much for having me.